live from Sister Basebone Studio. Urban Teachers Lounge is a platform for bridging the gap between educational scholarship and classroom teachers. Voices will include teachers, administrators, educational scholars, community members, and activists.
Hey everybody, welcome to Urban Teachers Lounge. I'm your host, G. Funmilayo DeVoe. This podcast is unapologetically for Black teachers, unapologetically by Black teachers. The purpose of the program is to bridge the gap between educational scholarship and classroom teachers. Today, oh my goodness, we got a lot to talk about. Today, I'm going to look at just the portion, which is half the book, that I've read of Bettina Love's book. Go get your coffee, because it's about to be on. Let's talk. All right. I hope you are ready for this one right here. First of all, I've posted this several times on Facebook, on Instagram. I love Dr. Bettina Love. She's fabulous. I met her when she just put this particular book out. I met her at a book signing. She signed my book. I cannot wait to really get an opportunity to talk to her. Hopefully one day have her on the podcast and she can go deeper on this book because I got some questions and conversation. So anyway, the book is We Want to Do More Than Survive, Abolitionist Teaching and the Pursuit of Educational Freedom. Baby, for all you folks that's in my age group, you probably know this particular movie, one of the greatest Black love stories of our time in this age, Love Jones. You remember that line old boy said, this right here, whoo, baby. First of all, I'm very upset that I read slow, because if you look at this book, you will see all this highlighting, and I got words written all over the little bitty margins and tabs and Post-its, and I'm only halfway through. But you have to read this as a close read. Don't just, I'm just going to kind of skim through. Don't do that. Don't do that. So the biggest challenge that I've had is how I can put all of this into this podcast. Like, how can I just kind of summarize it within the time that I try to allot for you, my listeners? So I'm going to start out with a couple of things. I'm going to leave at least 6 different sources to go along with this. What I love about this book is because she is a scholar as well as she's a professor, I believe, at UGA, University of Georgia. She indeed has the references and the literature to back up what she's saying. And so it's always fabulous and wonderful for me to read people. And it's not like we don't know. Like, we know what we deal with when we go into the classroom. We know what we deal with when we go into the school building. But, folks don't deal with our experiential knowledge, right? So it you hate to do it, but then you like to have that backup. And Sister then gave us some major backup on this thing. So she has quoted or referenced many scholars, Black, white, female, yes, cite Black women. And she did the damn thing. Like, I'm sorry, I can't say it no other way. She's so tight that in the acknowledgments, she gave acknowledgments to people that wrote some songs, because she's a hip hop. She does hip hop teaching like that, right? So she even, one of my favorite songs, she acknowledges Erykah Badu. You know what I mean? Orange Moon. Some of y'all don't know that. Anyway, so I'm just trying to give you a quick overview. You just go buy this book. Like, this book particularly if you're on your way back to school, meaning I go back to work in 2 weeks. This is the state of Georgia. I know some of y'all, you don't go back to September. Lucky you. But we going to be back on the plantation on August the 1st or 5th or something to that effect. So this book is a really good book to inspire you, to help you remember why you did this thing. Like, what did you come into education for? You clearly didn't come in for the money. And if you did, you're bad. Because we don't get paid like that once you take out taxes and insurance, So this book has been very inspiring for me personally, because last year was a very, very difficult year. I don't even know what year it was. I think 17. It's been very hard, but the book, I like at this time of year to refresh. And so in the summertime, we all need to sit back, do whatever it is you do to get your mind right, to go back, because it's not about anybody but the kids we serve. It's all about them, period. So let me start with the very beginning of her book. She quotes Maya Angelou. And we do love Maya Angelou, Mojibah to her. My mission in life is not merely to survive, but to thrive. And to do so with some passion, some compassion, some humor, and some style. So that's eldership speaking right there. Let that settle. The mission in life, her mission in life, my mission in life, our mission in life is not merely to survive, but to thrive, and to do so with some compassion, some passion, some humor, and some style. All right. And before I go any further, I want to quote, because this goes along with, framing this book and how Bettina Love really responded not only to the teachers, those of us that are in this thing, still in the classroom, but she also responded to our elders, because our elders have given us a charge. And too often, in the time that I've been teaching, I didn't know some things that elder Black educators was saying and putting down, and they probably don't give it to you in some of these teaching places, whatever. We still have a responsibility at some point to take the responsibility and find out, right? So Barbara Sizemore, I talk about her all the time. She's my ancestral idol, right? I think she is the truth. But the book that she wrote, and I'll add this, and I normally talk about this book. It's called Walking in Circles, The Black Struggle for School Reform. And she wrote this literally on her dying bed. And she wrote this, and I want you to think about this as we're looking into this book. She said, lastly, as my life ends, I must encourage the freedom fighters who follow that any approach which fails to address white supremacy and its counterpart, the imputation of Black inferiority, will force you to walk in circles as I have done. Unless you want to wind up where you came in, seek strong confrontation to white supremacy at every opportunity and keep the glare on it. Let me tell you something. I've been studying this sentence, this last paragraph in her book, in her introduction, I believe, since I started really reading and researching, and since I started this program. And it's been a difficult task, because education is a major system, right? And if we do not acknowledge, this is what she said, if we do not acknowledge that it stands on racist practices, then guess what? We spinning around. And this woman was a teacher, a classroom teacher, principal. She became the superintendent, the first Black female superintendent. She went on to college, on a college level, and was a major researcher in education. urban education. So if she's saying that it took her a lifetime, it is our job now to pick up the pieces. She said we need to address racism. You cannot sit here and reform education. You know, I'm on my soapbox now. You can't reform education without saying it's sitting on some racist practices. Period. Point blank. Now, with that, I lead you back to this book. Bettina Love says we want to do more than survive. And I love that she's not only talking about the students, but she's also talking about the teachers. And I feel that way because last year and many years, I've thought about, if you know, we got so many days before fall break, so many days before spring break, so many days before Christmas break. Oh, baby, if you just wait. I remember last year we were on countdown to 4 more Mondays, 3 more Mondays. Like, come on, partner. This is we and it's hard. I'm not saying that, you know, look, it took me a long time to get to this place. And I know the minute I go to work, you know, I'll probably start my countdown again. It's like, oh, okay, we got how many more weeks before our first break, right? Because this is hard work. Okay, so let's get on. So number 1, I want to talk about, she mentioned, and since I've already said mine, I'm going to start at this other part. She talked about part of this book, why she wrote it, is because in her experience teaching, she found a moment in time where she had to really question, like, what am I doing? Why am I here? What did I go into teaching for? Because this is not an easy thing. And she said specifically, I was struggling to remember why I become a teacher. And the students were struggling with the purpose of it all. We are all trying to survive. When I read that, man, I had to pause. Because we're struggling as teachers, you know, trying to get our kids, you know, I'm so sick of these tests. I'm sick of grades because one way or another, I'm judged on them. Oh, your kids didn't pass the test, or they, you know, your failure rate is too high. Guess what? If you on a 5th grade reading level and you want me to teach some 11th grade reading, guess what? They not going to do it. 1, they cannot do it. And 2, 3, 4, let's go back. Let's build them up. Why are we keep beating the kids down, and then beating the kids down, you're beating the teachers down, right? Okay, I said it. So, I wanted to start with that part, right? But then let's go back to, I'm going to try to stick with 3 points at this moment. 1, she talks about mattering. And so we love the sisters when they came out with Black Lives Matter. And so by the time we started dealing with the word matter, everybody, you know, other people decided that, you know, blue lives matter, all lives matter. Babe, we're not talking about all lives right now. We know that all lives matter, but you aren't being killed in the street, and your educational system in your head is better than ours. That's a whole nother conversation. But I will say, I challenge the ideology that white people and white education is better than black education. Because guess what? Y'all don't have, and I said it, you don't necessarily have to deal with racism, classism, gender. You don't have to deal with language barriers. You don't have to deal with the things that the system puts in place. You can just like turn your head. And that's exactly what Dr. Love is saying in this book, right? So mattering. If we look at mattering, and she explains abolitionist teaching, right? So I'm going to be quoting from her book because I have it and it's greatly highlighted, right? So if we talk about mattering, she says this: I am certain that dark people have never truly mattered in this country except as property and labor. Rest on that when you talk about prison to pipeline, the prison, school to prison pipeline, right? Rest on that when you talk about defunding public education, when you know most public education is in this country is predominantly black and brown children, right? Feast on this, because if you know, just feast on that, because I'm not, you know what I'm talking about. Truly, she said, I'm certain that dark people in this country have never truly mattered, except for property and for labor. I love the way she talks about we're disposable. Oh. So the other day when I read that, this is why it takes me so long to read, because I landed on the word disposable. Okay, so black children are disposable. Black people are disposable. How are we disposable? Because at any given moment, you can change. You can do whatever you want to do. Right now, I just got an email from the state of Georgia, as a matter of fact, that's saying, oh, we want your input, teacher, on the curriculum. Lord have mercy. I have worked in the state of Georgia for a long time. And since 2005, every other day, it feels like we changing the curriculum. The kids still can't read. We still have because you're attacking this thing from a perspective that's not realistic. You're not addressing the fact that somebody's making money off of saying that our kids, our schools, our neighborhoods are not good enough, right? So we're gonna create some new stuff, the new thing, right? So let's talk about that. What is the new thing? So she gives a whole definition on educational justice, and I'm gonna be going back and forth. I'm gonna go back and forth, but it's three things I'm looking at: mattering and abolitionist teaching. That's one. Number two, educational justice, and number three, educational survival complex. Okay, so I'm gonna be flipping back and forth, but I want you to follow the points here. So if we're looking at mattering, and we're looking at the fact that we as black people and brown people have to constantly remind you that we're here in this country. We've all participated in building this country. And we do matter. Our lives matter. Our where we live matters. How we educate our children. All of that stuff, it matters. And of course, it matters that you're trying to kill black people in the middle of the street and you're housing Latino children or Latinx children in cages. Really? Okay. But this is nothing new. Don't let me go there. So, mattering. One of the first things that I want to make sure this year that I talk about with my students is mattering. If we do not convince our children, and those of you that are in the classroom currently know, in real life, it takes you about 3 to 4 months to get our students to really trust you and believe that you're there for the right purpose. Because they can size you up day one. They can size you up like, oh, you're not really about this thing. You don't really care about my well-being, right? You don't care what I go through to get to this building. You only care about numbers. You see me as a test score, right? So it takes a minute. But if we start out saying, look, you do matter. And in allowing children to matter, that means, guess what? Oh my God, you listen to them. They have a voice. What are they saying? What are they feeling? The world already mutes black people, brown people, women, right? So if we know that, and I tell my kids all the time, I'm the last thing. When you in high school, the teachers that are in high school, and I'm just going to just reach broadly and say, the teachers that are caring for you in high school are the last before you get out into the world, right? And so that's where I get like slightly arrogant, because I make sure, and I get angry, and me and my kids fight all the time, right? I get angry because I know that when you walk out this door, you're not going to have the vote. You're not going to have me, holding you accountable. You're not going to have, you can follow me, right? But we got to gird them up. And first they got to know that they matter, because in the world, in social media, they don't matter. In education, they don't matter. Why? Because you keep coming up with all these things to prove that they don't matter. And so that leads us to, and I'll give you the definition on that, but that leads us to educational survival complex, right? Okay, let me go back again. Educational justice. What does that mean? She says, when you understand how hard it is to fight for educational justice, you know that there are no shortcuts, no gimmicks. You know that to be true deep in your soul, which brings both frustration and determination. And that is exactly what I just said, right? So I know that a lot of the things that are being top down, from a leadership perspective, when you get top down directives to do this because you're only after some numbers, and then I see my babies in my classroom and I'm like, but they're not there, but give me an opportunity to build them. That's abolitionist teaching. We need to build them not only to survive, as she said, but to thrive, right? So, then it goes on. She says educational justice is going to take people power driven by the spirit and ideas of the folks who have done the work anti-racism before. Abolitionists. Look out. So one, what does this tell us? It tells us that our elders that have gone on before us have fought a bigger struggle than we fighting, right? They fought some stuff. And we are now the ones with the batons. If Barbara Sizemore says I spent my entire life, and I know she did 40 plus years in education from K-12 to really from P-20, right? If I know for a fact she spent all her life, and on her dying bed, she said, we still got to call out racism. Because no matter what pedagogy you come up with, what curriculum you come up with, we are going to keep walking in circles, right? So let's go a little bit deeper. She said, and this is Dr. Love, the fact that dark people are tasked with the work of dismantling these centuries-old oppressions is a continuation of racism. God, why is this? And it goes back to what I said earlier. I said it. White folks are more miseducated than black people. Nah, I said that. G. Funmilayo DeVoe. Why? Because if you think that it's my responsibility to fight, what did she just say? It is our responsibility as black and brown people to dismantle your system. You created the system. And no, you didn't. You live in a system that was created to benefit you. I'm not going down that line, but I just wanted to say that. And so here we go. She quotes Toni Morrison. The very serious function of racism is distraction. It keeps you from doing your work. It keeps you explaining over and over again your reason for being. See, that's what black people are doing. And the sad thing is, it's a catch-22. If we don't say, look here, this is a racist practice. This is built on racist ideology. This is built on the lies of black inferiority, and we can add brown inferiority, and anybody that is non-white inferiority. If we keep saying that, as Barbara Sizemore did all of her life, then it does distract us from moving forward. But guess what? We've had examples. So we know in order to evolve, In order to be what we need to be, we got to take up another level. We got to go up another notch. We can't sit in the same place. And so that becomes a challenge. The challenge then is what? We know our history. And if we don't know it, we need to research it. We should know that I'm learning, and this is not a critique of anybody but myself, as a matter of fact. We know, and if we don't, I'm telling you, there is research that is written by people of color that give voice to our true experience along and within the confines of racist ideology, right? There is a lens that has been created by elders before us, Derrick Bell and Crenshaw and all these folks, right? Critical race theory. There are elders that have already laid this down. Gloria Ladson-Billings, who said, look at race when you're talking about educational reform and you're talking about what's going on, right, in education as it pertains to Black and brown people. Look with a race eye. It's called critical race theory. Critical race studies in education, critical race theory in education. These folks have been doing the work. It is our responsibility. The purpose of this podcast is to share with you, to raise us to another level, to share with you, hey, here's some research that I knew nothing about. And now that I know it as a teacher, a true teacher, whatever we know, we teach. So this is what I found. This is what I'm finna tell you. So let's move on with, she has a section in here that says reform ain't justice. It's not. In the time that I've taught, every other day you come up with a new reform plan for the classroom. But you haven't been in the classroom. It's a top-down ideology. I just read something today that's talking about now there's another organization that is a teacher certification. You know, they certify teacher education programs. So now there's this competition between ideologies of whether you should be a top-down certification, meaning standards and data and all this other stuff, or whether you should be someone that looks more collaboratively. Because she already said it takes all of us. We know that, Black people. It takes a village to raise a child. It takes a village. It takes every aspect to really change this education. And I got to there's a quote in here that I definitely want to use. Let me try to find it. It might be when she talked about the third point I was talking about, educational survival complex. So within that, did I write it down? See, this is what happens when you mark up your whole book. The entire book is marked and stamped. Okay, here it is. This is what I was looking for. She says teachers must embrace theories such as critical race theory, settler colonialism, Black feminism, disability, critical race studies, and other critical theories that have the ability to interrogate anti-Blackness and frame experiences with injustice, focusing the moral compass toward a North Star that is ready for a long and dissenting fight for educational justice. Right? But then, so this is what I've said. We have got to look at things from a broader scope. If you keep learning about education through the sole lens of the educational process without looking at the context of it, you're not looking at the political stance of it. What are we teaching right now with 45 as the president? You cannot go into a classroom with Black or brown people and not examine his rhetoric and not examine he has the climate, the racial climate. We teach Black boys. We teach Black girls, Latinx students right? So these babies, I know last year I had that issue where I had some babies that were, did not speak English well, right? And their concern is immigration, and these ICE people coming, right? So we have got to be real when we go into these classrooms and really address some stuff. But guess what? When you got top-down leadership and you have curriculums handed to you that are not relevant to the kids that you're looking at, that's a problem. And hence, the whole point of this book, Abolitionist Teaching. From a leadership perspective, then it's called adaptive leadership. I cannot sit here and teach the same thing and the same way that I taught last year, because last year was a different climate. This year, the climate is changing, right? Not only, the global climate, right? But also just the political landscape here. So let's even look deeper. We have to look at education more broadly, because she mentions it and we know this. Some kind of way, it has become the education's problem, or teachers or schools' problems, all social ills in the U.S. So if we educate everybody, that'll solve all the social ills. And that was the point that I was looking for. So then this is where she goes on, and I wanted to bring this up as a challenge to all of us. It says, these theories additionally help in understanding that educational justice can happen only through the simultaneous fight for economic justice, racial justice, housing justice, environmental justice, religious justice, queer justice, trans justice, citizenship justice, and disability justice. And I like to use the words of Bob Marley. If we look at these isms and schisms, right? Isms and schisms we need to address. So you cannot look at education as, this the curriculum, the reason why they're not passing. No. Let's talk about housing injustice. So that's the area that I'm living in with my research right now, looking at gentrification and how it's not only affecting the children, but specifically Black teachers. Because if you close the school down because so-called the population has gone down, then that displaces Black teachers. Guess what? The reason why you have 80% white teachers nationally teaching Black and brown students is because right after Brown versus Boyd, the displacement of Black teachers happened. So my point with that is, hey, we can't be blind to the fact of this is how this has been status quo, right? This has been business as usual. We find an opportunity to move. And let's go back to the word I started with, disposal. It's easy to dispose of the Black people in the city, right? Because you raise the rent. I've been affected by that. You raise the tax bracket, even for people that own houses in the city. All of a sudden, you got all this money to invest in the city, but you didn't have it before. All of a sudden, we got all this money to invest in the charter school that I didn't even talk about that one yet, right? You got all this money that you take from the public school for charter schools. Okay, come on now. Y'all ain't ready for that. So the fact that, I really want to live in this area. So for me personally, I was not an education major. I was a literary studies major, which means that my program landed in humanities. So I've always had that particular lens of not just looking at education or anything for that matter from one side. I was a police officer for 7 years, right? The one thing that we were taught during the time I was there was looking at the totality of the circumstances. And I quote that all the time. What is the whole picture? Because if you're just going to tell me, this baby's on a 5th grade reading level. This school is a failing school. It's some propaganda around this. Oh, the teachers are wrong. This the parents' fault. It's everybody looking for somebody to blame, but nobody is accepting the responsibility of what they could do, right? And then we're not looking at the full picture. Because, yes, you want to say we're at risk and, all these urban welfare mothers, single mothers. Like, you come up with all these terms to justify disposal. I said it. Think about that. All these, and then as a teacher, you come up with terms to justify getting rid of teachers, right? Instead of building. So that means we continuously have this revolving door that has new curriculum, new books, new standards, new testing, it's always that new thing. And she already said we can't do this with gimmicks. Did I read that quote? I need to find that one. You can't do this with quick fixes. It wasn't a quick mess up. Education system didn't just get messed up today. And it wasn't only messed up in one area, but we want to blame. Come on now. That's abolitionist teaching. Let's rise. Let's remember that if our elders already said we're spinning around in circles because we're not having the deeper conversations. So tell me how you personally can be a student in a school and English is not your predominant language, your dominant but you are expected to not only read, but read on level, take tests on level in order to move. So you've already made, going back to that first word we started with, mattering. You've already told this baby, you don't matter. Your culture doesn't matter. Your language doesn't matter. Imagine that. So then you have students. I've had students to come to class and they've had a major trauma in their life. And they just happen to come to school because it's supposed to be a peace. It's supposed to be a safety zone. But then you as a teacher continue with racist practices and judgmental, and you mute their voices. So my challenge this year for myself is to take the muzzle off of our kids. They have to have a place to learn, to grow, to speak. We cannot teach children without knowing who they are, knowing where they stand. We talk about differentiation of instruction, right? But you can't differentiate if you don't know where the kids are. So, this book right here, as I was saying earlier, I'm definitely going to send this to Dr. Love, and I'm hoping to have an extensive conversation with her about this because it is a challenge. But are we up for the challenge? And even if we don't stay in the classroom, how are we going to do what we need to do for our kids, for our community, for our future as Black people, right? We've had scholars for generations trying to figure out how we can get full citizenship in this country. Voting, we've had, education, so many ways that our elder scholars and ancestor scholars have tried to level this ground for us. And the struggle is real. So I'm going to end with that. Viva la revolution, right? Long live the revolution. We still got to do what we have to do. I am so glad you are here today. Clearly, I've had a little time to get myself together. I hope you share this podcast with your community of teachers, scholars, and activists, and Dr. Love, if you know her. And also, let's get ready for this school year. We still have work to do, and these babies need us, period. I love to hear from you. Please follow me on Facebook. Sometimes, let me just put this out here. Sometimes I don't always post on Instagram because you got to have a picture and it's a whole nother thing. But I post almost every day on Facebook. So at least follow me on Facebook and see some of the articles that I find. Follow me on Instagram. Podomatic, of course, is where this lands. YouTube. I'm also on Spotify and iTunes. Leave your comments and your suggestions. Please talk to me because I really want to start having more voices other than mine. Until we meet again, peace, power, and progress.